if your genes don't guarantee disease, then what actually does? So if you have, don't panic, but don't ignore it either. What if I told you the most feared gene in brain health is only dangerous when you let it be? They told you ApoE4 was your destiny, that if you had the gene, you'd lose your mind no matter what. But that's not how genes work. And it's time that you knew the truth. So welcome, everyone. My name is Dr. Mark Shankman. Welcome back to the Obesity Project, episode 92, The Alzheimer's Gene is Not Your Destiny. So today we're talking about ApoE and the ApoE4 gene. So let's dive right in and talk about what this is. So the ApoE gene, otherwise known as apolipoprotein E gene, is a gene that plays a role in the metabolism of cholesterol and other fats in your body. The ApoE gene also helps to transport cholesterol and repair these guys, the neurons that you see behind me. So there are three versions of ApoE. There's ApoE2, E3, and E4. So the ApoE4, this is the variant that's considered a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease, the biggest risk factor, in fact. People who inherit two copies of the ApoE4 gene have a significantly higher risk of developing Alzheimer's than people who do not. Then there's the ApoE3 gene, and this is the most common variant of the ApoE gene and is not associated with increased risk of Alzheimer's. And then finally, we have the ApoE2. This variant is associated with a lower risk of Alzheimer's, but it can also increase the risk of other conditions such as heart disease. So boiling this down, the ApoE4 gene in particular affects the production of a protein called apolipoprotein E. Now, this protein helps to clear cholesterol and other fats from the brain. In people with the ApoE4 gene, that apolipoprotein E that's produced from the ApoE4 gene is less efficient at clearing these substances, which can lead to the accumulation of harmful deposits in the brain that are often associated with Alzheimer's disease. So let's talk about the risk just a little bit. If you carry one copy of the ApoE4 gene, your Alzheimer's risk increases 2 to 3 times. 2 copies, now your risk increases up to 10 to 12 times someone without a copy of this gene. So the New England Journal of Medicine back in 2021 recognized that ApoE4 is the strongest known genetic risk factor for late onset Alzheimer's. But here's what that doesn't mean. And what it doesn't mean is as important as what it means. It does not mean that you will get Alzheimer's. So it does mean you will get Alzheimer's. It also means that your brain is more vulnerable, especially to the modern Western diet. So if your genes don't guarantee disease, then what actually does? So we're going to talk about now the fire needing fuel, and that you control. So ApoE4 brains are more sensitive to blood sugar spikes, chronic inflammation, insulin resistance, and toxic fats and processed foods. In the Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience journal in 2020, ApoE4 carriers were found to experience more oxidative stress and mitochondrial damage when eating high-carb, high-sugar diets. So, as an analogy, your genetics are the kindling, but it does take sugar, seed oils, and insulin resistance to light the match. So here's where most people go wrong, and here's how you can change everything. So we're going to talk next about diet, specifically keto, carnivore, and low carb to the rescue. So why do ketogenic and low carb diets help? Well, they do several things, four things in particular. They lower insulin, they reduce brain inflammation, they protect the mitochondria, which is critical, and feed the brain with ketones, which is a fuel that does not require insulin to enter the neurons, the brain cells. Even ApoE4 brains use ketones efficiently when glucose is failing. So if you have the gene, don't panic, but don't ignore it either. So let's talk about the lifestyle blueprint to outsmarting your genetics. So first thing you need to do is you need to ditch those processed carbs and sugar. You need to eliminate seed oils from your diet because they're very prone to oxidation and create aldehydes, which are very damaging. You need to prioritize sleep and movement, so you need to be active. And you need to get your insulin tested, not just your cholesterol and not just your LDL. You need to get those insulin levels tested so we know whether or not you have elevated insulin levels or hyperinsulinemia. So then you also need to use food as medicine, not as a memory supplement. So having the gene is like living in a wildfire zone. You can ignore it or you can fireproof your house. Back in 2021, there was a study out of Nutrients that showed that ApoE4 carriers who adopt a Mediterranean or low carbohydrate lifestyle reduced cognitive decline by over 40%. So you absolutely can affect your mental status through lifestyle alone. It definitely plays a part. So this has been episode 92 of the Obesity Project. The Alzheimer's gene is not in your destiny. Your DNA is not your destiny. It's just your starting point. ApoE4, yes, it does raise your risk, but lifestyle is what determines your outcome. If you feed your brain wisely, you're going to lower your insulin levels. You're going to turn off the fire before it spreads. So don't forget, here on the Obesity Project, we're cutting through the myths and we're getting to the root. So coming up next in episode 93 tomorrow, why you feel like you're dying at 3 p.m. So we'll explore how metabolic dysfunction, not burnout, is stealing your clarity, your focus, and your memory. So today has been the last in a series of mental health related issues. Now we're going to get to some more random myths and some other things outside of mental health. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed this topic. I hope you learned a little something. I hope you have a much better understanding now of the genetics behind Alzheimer's, how ApoE4 affects things, how diet can limit the effect of those genes. And I appreciate your time, effort, and your attention. So thank you so much for watching. Like, share, and comment. Hit that subscribe notification bell. Hit that hit that subscribe button, that bell notification. Do all the things that you need to do to get this information out to the masses, because we need to spread the word. We need to let people know that metabolic dysfunction absolutely is one of the main issues facing Americans and the world today. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next video.